as a woman, my mother's whole thing was strength, resilience, and being independent.
Okay.
And so she wanted me to edify that, at the highest degree. Her whole thing was, I never want you to walk out in life and not know, number one, who you are, what you're doing, and you can't survive by yourself. That biggest lesson came when she lost my dad. It was a change in the dynamic, and so she was just like, I don't want you, even if you don't get married or something happens to your spouse, you still got to know how to live. And that is something that I teach my boys as well. When you leave my house, I need you to know how to function.
Welcome back to another episode of Women of TmrO. If you are new here, thank you so much for stopping and clicking on this video. Women of TmrO is a platform dedicated to the longevity and success of women worldwide. So if that's you, you'll want to watch this video. Do us a favor, comment, like, share, and subscribe. Lisa,
Yes.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you for having me.
honored.
Yay.
I've been seeing your content for a while now, and I love it. I
Thank
just love
you.
one other thing I'll say. Not only is the message like really nourishing, I'm an aesthetic girl.
Aw.
So I love just the presentation of how you present yourself, and so kudos to you.
Thank you.
For what you're doing, and just
Yes.
like the class in which you offer us the message. So
Thank
I love
you.
that, because I think that I know that is a big, and that's important, to see women show up in ways that can kind of guide people. Like, okay, so I can, what is that song that says, fully clothed and still giving? So I love that. Tell me where you're from, where you were raised. What does that look like?
Sure. So I'm from a small town, Georgia. I'm gonna tell you, but
Okay.
it probably won't even find it. But we do have a college, a university, Georgia Southern University. So
Yeah.
it's not too far from
I've heard of
Savannah. Born and raised there. Small community, not diverse. You either black or white. And so, yeah, that's basically it, my baby.
Yeah. How was it growing up there?
So
Is Statesboro?
it's Statesboro. Statesboro, I mean, it's like small town Georgia, Unfortunately, we have the little railroad track thing that splits the divide. Old money type of
Got it.
place to be raised in. But for the most part, I'll say that my parents grounded me in cultural exploration. So as far as that goes, we were all good. Yeah.
So when you say cultural exploration, was that just like diving into it through like the music, through the literature? Was it travel?
So my mom was an avid reader, loved reading. So one of the things that she did growing up, which was crazy, I thought it was crazy. Good for me now, but she didn't believe in idle time. So once you got done with school or chores, read a book. So she would give me her college textbooks. She was in the club in college, Afro-American studies. So I would read those books. My dad was into music. So, and then when we take summer trips, it was always something educational, and always went back into culturally like who we were. So it wasn't like Six Flags or, you know what I'm saying? It was something, a museum or somewhere that we could go, because we were, again, in a small town where you don't see that type of thing. And our parents really wanted us to be culturally competent.
I love
who we are.
That's a blessing,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's a huge blessing, because look
Yes.
how you can thrive in your later life.
Absolutely.
I love when it's such a blessing when you even have parents that know to do that.
Yes.
And that have the resources or just like the foresight to say, okay, this is how I'm going to set my children up for the future.
Yes.
How many siblings?
So, long story. So I have 2 families.
Okay.
So I am adopted and I have a brother. And then in 2017, I found my siblings, and it was 8 of us. We lost one in 2020. My biological mother, had 8 kids. 2-part family. It's a blessing, though.
2-part family. Okay, can I ask about that?
Yes.
Yeah, how soon did you know about?
A cousin actually told me. And when you're young, information hits your ears, and you don't know what's secret and what's not. So I think it was the excitement. He was a younger cousin that I had, and he came up to me one day and he was like, "You're adopted." This was like the end of school. We were getting ready to get in. I was a car rider, so I was waiting on my mom, and I was standing by my friend, and he said it with like such revelation. He was excited. And I remember when he told me that, I got scared.
How old were you?
Because I was 8 years old.
8.
I was 8. But the funny thing is, right, I always felt like I didn't match up.
Okay.
Especially when my brother came. My brother and I are 7 years apart. So definitely when he came, I was like, this is a little different.
You noticed it?
I noticed immediately. And then I would have people make little comments. Who do you look like? Your mom or your dad? You don't look like your mom or your dad. So that kind of gave me a clue in. But when he told me, I got scared. I thought, oh my goodness, that means since I know if I say something to my parents, they're going to take me somewhere and like get rid of me. Girl, I'm 8.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
but those are the things that happen, especially at those ages.
Absolutely.
When you don't know what to do with what you're feeling or receiving. It's just like, because I feel like even at that age of 8, those ages like 7 through like even like 15 or like we're still wanting to be showed that we can be loved and accepted and seeing where we fit in. So anything that arises that kind of may create some type of alienation or I'm different or can really send us as children.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you found yourself just kind of being afraid, and how do you remember how you dealt with that? Did you say anything?
I didn't say a word. I remember getting in the back of my mom's car, and I just sat there, and I was so quiet because I was trying to figure out, like, you know the term adoption, but you don't know how deep adoption goes. Like, I'm trying to figure it out in my head. Like, what is this? And what does this actually mean? So I really didn't. So my dad, my adopted dad, he died when I was 10.
Okay.
And right after that, I think I was 11. I asked my mom. I just came out of nowhere. It was crazy. I think at that point it had been just toiling at me. And I really wanted to know. And so I shocked her. And she was like, who told you that? Instead of maybe a little encouraging, I think because I came to her the way that I did, she was defensive.
What did you say? Did you ask her or you said, I know I'm adopted? Like,
no, I was like, Mom, am I adopted? And she was like, what? And I was like, am I adopted? And she kind of just stood there. And her face, it looked angry. But then she said, yeah, you are. And she said, I'm going to tell you as much as I know. And she didn't have much to tell. And she said, but, I don't know what you want me to tell you because I don't know too much. At that point, I knew my mother was irritated. It had shifted her world as well. Yeah. It's kind of like that secret that you keep. And then after that, I just remember there were times where my mom, I could see her watching me. I think she was trying to figure out, where I was mentally, because I had just lost my dad. Yeah. She had just lost her husband. My youngest brother was 3 at the time. So we had a lot going on. And then later, I would ask questions, and the more questions I asked, the more irritated she became. And so I stopped. I realized that was a painful thing for her. And so we didn't discuss it. But she did tell me I had an older brother. So I mindfully kept that, in mind. And I said, oh, I'm going to find my brother one day. I'm going to find him. And what's crazy about that is I meditated and prayed on that every single day. I just want to find my brother. I wasn't too concerned with finding my biological mother for whatever reason. I wanted to know what it felt like to be a younger sibling because I was the oldest. So I think that's what fascinated me. Kept that in my system and went through the whole process of Georgia has this thing where if you are an adopted person, you have to pretty much write to the state to see if you can get unidentifying information. That's the first thing that you do.
Okay.
Got the unidentifying information. Again, I only got the physical features of my mom. And that was it. And then to go further, you'd have to get the unidentifying information. Then they can do a search once you do that. So I sat on it for some years. I wasn't ready. And it's so crazy how everything kind of unfolded. So I remember 2017, just one day I was just like, I'm going to do it. I just felt this pull. I had been praying about it and I felt confident enough to do it. I called and I got the information. She sent me the forms. The lady sent me the forms and she was like, just, if you want to find your biological mother, write her a note. We'll send everything. We'll get in contact. We'll unseal the records. And she said, baby, it takes about 4 to 5 months just to, get you prepared. I said, okay, no problem. So that was a Monday when I called her, sent everything in. That Friday, she called me.
It was a quick turnaround.
She called me that Friday.
So wait, you were an adult by then?
Yes, okay. I was, oh goodness, 2017. Oh,
you were an adult.
I was an adult. Yeah, so she called me that Friday because I saved her number. After we spoke, she said, this is my number and I'll be calling you from this number. So I saved her number. She called me that Friday morning and, I can't remember her name, but she said, I am so-and-so and so, and I got some news for you. And I said, okay. And she said, but I don't think it's the news that you want to hear, but I'm going to help you through this process. So I was like, oh, this is heavy.
Yeah.
And she said, well, unfortunately, your mother has passed away. She died in 95. And I was like thinking from the unidentifying information, I put her at the age of 20 when she had me. And I'm like, she didn't live long. She died when she was 33. So she said, but what I can do is you have her last name. Baby, she said, Google. She's a Black woman. So sweet. She said, baby, Google. Google and Facebook is your friend. She said, put the name in, something will pop up. Sure enough, I put the information in thinking, she said, if you put your mom's name in, the obituary come up in Google. So I did, nothing came up. And the last name is such a not common last name. Her maiden name was Stubbs. And so I went on Facebook, put it in, and this is how God is just, I feel like he orchestrated. I know he orchestrated this whole thing. I put in the name and, some people came up, but I went to this one post and this guy put, I miss my grandmother so much. So I'm looking at the post because he had his Facebook kind of open where you could see certain things.
Yeah.
And I saw the post and he had a picture of his grandmother. And then under the picture of his grandmother, he had the information from her obituary and her daughter's name that preceded her in death. And I said, oh my God, this is my cousin. Let me tell you how God works, okay? Under the post, a lady put, my cousin's name is DeAndre. So under the post, the lady put, hey, DeAndre, I've been trying to get in contact with your mom. Did she change her number? Can you inbox me her phone number? Well, instead of him inboxing, he replied with his phone number. He said, give me a call.
Whoa.
And so I said, okay, all right, I'm going to take a chance. So that night, I prayed on it because I was very afraid. Come on now, somebody call you. I'm thinking like, how I'm supposed to do this whole thing. I called him that night. He didn't answer the phone, so I left him a message. And I was nervous as heck.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, my name is Lisa Marie. I would like to talk to somebody. I found your number online. It's about Cheryl Stubbs. Can you give me a call back? So he didn't call me that night, and I got scared. I was like, I done spooked this person. That next morning around 7 o'clock, the number that I called, he called me, and he said, somebody called me about my aunt. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, hey. I was like, I'm her daughter. And I was like, I don't know how to explain this. And he was like, wait, what?
Wow.
And he said, I got my mom here. And so they were on the phone. He was on speaker. And she said, baby, when is your birthday? And I said, September 9th, 1982. And she dropped the phone. This is why this is relevant. The cousin that I was talking to, his birthday was September 8th. My mother went into labor the next day. So they were as sisters. They were very close. They were thinking I was going to come on my cousin's birthday. How my mother eluded everyone with this was she went to the hospital. She had already made it up in her mind that she was going to put me up for adoption. But she told everyone that she had a miscarriage.
Wow.
And so that was the story that they went with. And my aunt said, oh, my God. She said, baby, you have 7 other brothers and sisters. And she said, I want to tell you something that happened last year. She said, your sister called me upset and said that your brother Ken, which is the oldest sibling, said, we got a sister out there somewhere. And
how did he know?
He remembered when our mother was pregnant. And he had been telling them for years. And so my aunt said when my sister called her, she was like, no, your mother was pregnant, but she miscarried. And she was like, Ken keeps saying, we got a sister out there. And she said, and then even worse, their dad, which my mother later married. So my other 6 siblings, they have the same father. He told them the same. He said, you have a sister out there. And so my sister was asking my aunt, like, give up the information. And she really didn't know. And my sister thought my aunt was lying. So she said, I owe your sister an apology because I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. She said, matter of fact.
When you were on the phone.
Yeah, she said, I'm going to give you, I'm texting them now. She was like, I'm texting them, letting them know. And we were halfway through the conversation and my phone just started going off. And she said, baby, they live in Connecticut. So you're going to get some numbers calling from Connecticut. So they ringing, going off. I'm like, oh my God. So she said, baby, answer the phone. Go call them. And the first person that called me was my sister. With all of us, Ken me and him were 2 years apart. And then after that, it was like a year or 2 after that my mother was having children. And my sister called me and she said, Ken was right the whole time. And she said, let me pull you up on Facebook. She said, what's your name on Facebook? So I'm getting her information. She's getting my information with putting it in. And I said, I can't find you. We were getting so excited and irritated at the same time because we were trying to find each other.
Yeah.
And she couldn't find me. She said, there's so many Lisa Maries. Give me another name, And I'm like, give me your name. So finally pulled her up and I said, oh my gosh. I said, I know this is you because we have the same eyes. And she said, send me a friend request so I can see. And so when I sent her a friend request, she said, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And she said, you look just like our mom. When they sent me the picture, I was like, oh my God. Oh my goodness. But the beautiful part about this is Ken, my oldest brother that we lost in 2020, when he called me, the first thing he said was, I knew I wasn't crazy. And he said, I knew I had a sister. And he said, I didn't even know the sex of the baby, but I kept telling my mama we was having a girl. So he kept in his head that he had a sister. He was definitive. And from that moment that we talked, every day or every other day we were on the phone.
Wow.
Ken was like definitely the mirrored version in the form of a man that I've never known. And he called me one day. I heard some beeping in the background. And I said, Ken, where are you? He said, I'm in the hospital. And I said, okay. I said, well, what's going on? He said, they found a spot on my lung. I said, everything will be all right. You know, a week later, Ken was gone. Wow. He had already had stage 4 cancer.
Oh,
it had progressively just, you know, he knew he was sick. But I think, you know, definitely fear and then being a man.
Yeah.
So he died shy of his 40th birthday. But I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
And it just shows, too, the power of prayer and meditation, because I kept this on my mind. Of course, I didn't know after that I had other siblings. I kept my brother on my mind. And it came to fruition. And just even him knowing, not even knowing the sex of the baby, but he was like, I got a sister.
He knew. He knew.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is like, wow. And I have questions.
Yes.
As you were speaking, things were coming up that I feel is like so valuable. Looking at you now, you know, they always say you don't look what you've been through. And I'm just like, that's a journey.
Absolutely.
Especially for you to, with all the great things that came with what your parents offered you and gave to you, finding out at 8 that it was official that you were not blood related, and you already kind of had felt that and didn't know what to do with the information, and then you talk to your mom, and I feel like depending on the dynamic of the mommy-daughter, you don't want to disappoint your mom.
Absolutely not.
You just don't. It's like she's like the bigger version of you.
Absolutely.
and you want to feel accepted and feel approved. How was it? How did it feel as a child, like just in your body and your emotions, of knowing that something that was so special to you was irritating to her? Like it was her pain point, and it wasn't even necessarily something that you could get relief from, because you were kind of protecting her, or just protecting yourself from the tension.
You know, one thing I will say, and my mother was a very, very strong and strong-willed, stern woman. We had a conversation afterwards, after I did get in contact with everyone. And because we were all on Facebook, I didn't want it to be a surprise to my mom. And so I felt it like deep in my spirit. I was like, I got to call her and tell her. You know?
Yeah.
I couldn't hide it. I mean, I literally sat on it for a day, and it was eating me up. And when I called her, she was so upset. And she said, well, what does this make me? And I just remember that being so heavy for me, because I was like, I just want you to be happy, because I want us to be one big family. And so in a way to kind of like cushion it, I said, Mama, like my mom died at 33. Like she's no longer here, you know? In essence, you're the only mother that I know. And she still was not trying to hear it. We had a conversation afterwards, and it didn't end well. It didn't end well. My mother was very emotional. And so we stopped talking for 2 years.
Really?
But I want to explain the dynamic between me and my mother as well. Again, I lost my mother in 2020 as well. So in July, I lost my mother. And then in September, I lost my brother, Ken. But before that happened, my whole life, I think, with her, because she was such a strong woman, and she was the youngest of 10 siblings, there was a different generation, different way she was,
Yeah.
brought up,
Yeah.
different beliefs. She was hard on me for reasons that I didn't understand. But I also had to understand too, my mother was the first college graduate. She put herself through school. Anything that she wanted to do, it was almost like she was the blueprint, and I need you to follow suit. And so we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, because while I thought that she was pushing me so hard, I resented her for that, because there was never any space for me to kind of be my own person in comparison to my dad, who was like, be a free spirit, do what you want to do as long as you get good grades and everything. But my mother was very finite and stern on what she believed in. So culminating into this situation, it was not off kilter for her to feel the way that she felt, because she's my mama. And bringing that situation was almost like attacking her. And
She was threatened.
she was very threatened, even with me saying my biological mother's no longer here. Almost like cushioning, like you're my only mom.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter the blood that runs through my veins, but I also had to, get her to understand as well. I need to know my family. The biggest thing I presented to her, I said, Mom, even when I had my kids and they asked for history, I could only go by what you and my dad's history was, and it wasn't the same. And I said, these are the things that's important.
Absolutely.
If I had questions, we couldn't necessarily go there. What ended the conversation, the argument, it got heated. And my mother was being selfish, and I felt like I tried to tell her the best way that I could that she was mirroring so many things she had done in my life, where anything that I wanted to do was like, you're going to do this. And she got silent with me on the phone, and she said, I want to tell you why it is that this bothers me.
Okay.
And I didn't know. This was my first time. My mother told me that she had several miscarriages, and that's why she adopted.
Yeah.
And when she said it in such a harsh tone that I couldn't even begin to love on her through the phone.
Got it.
She was so
get the
angry.
empathy going. Yeah.
And I'm just like, Ma, I never knew. And she was like, of course you didn't know, and it's like, all right. And she said, well, we're done. And when she said we were done, I cried. But it was one of those things where you kind of get used to it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? This was the longest stint that we had not talked, but we had gotten into this point where we were good, one moment, and then we backed up from each other, and I was good. I had my space. I knew how my mother, did her thing.
Yeah.
But that 2 years was long. She called me one day and she said, I just want to see how you doing. I'm good, Mama. Because again, she's my mom. I respect her.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm good. And we had a conversation. She was talking about work like nothing happened. And little by little, she would make phone calls to talk about nothing, absolutely nothing. And that was my mother's way of apologizing. And that's another thing as well. Sometimes what we expect from people, they can't give.
Yeah.
And so I took my mother wholeheartedly how she was. She was not able to apologize, but in her way, she was trying to make amends. And then in the most beautiful moment, she said, well, have you been talking to your siblings? Yes, Mom, I have. Well, maybe one day I can do a dinner and they can come to the house. And I said, okay, that works.
Yeah.
And then months later, she ended up passing away. But what I learned from that as well is that I never knew my mother's backstory because she didn't talk about it. I never knew her history. I never knew what she was up against. I only knew all she did was push me. I'm thankful for that, though. My mother taught me independence as a woman. She also taught me hold my head up. That was her biggest thing, too. She challenged me a lot. I was very shy growing up.
Oh, okay.
And she didn't like it. She didn't like the fact that when people spoke to me, I would lower my head or I kind of look at my feet. I'll never forget. It was so funny. We were in Walmart. And someone that my mother knew, she was talking to me, and I didn't know the lady. And so I'm looking at my feet, and my mother's like, she's talking to you. And so I look at her, and I'm answering her questions, and the lady leaves, and my mother snatches me, and she takes me in the toy aisle, and she comes down to my level, and she looks at me, and she says, I know you're shy, but don't you ever look down when someone is talking to you. She said, you look them dead in their eyes. Number one, that's because you're listening.
Yeah.
And number two, that's out of respect. And she said, the third thing I want you to always remember is if when someone is talking to you, you always lower your eyes and look down, they don't think that you're confident enough.
Yeah.
And this was a lesson young,
Yeah.
you know, but she said it in such a stern way. It was like, you fussing at me again. But it always carried.
Yeah.
Even when I had
Yeah.
those moments where I might have been extra nervous. Oh, mama said, don't lower your eyes. Look at the person.
Yeah.
Show them that you have just as much confidence. And so it's those little nuggets,
Yeah.
those examples. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That you can appreciate now.
Yes.
This so I just continuously have more questions as you're sharing this.
Yeah.
This is such a amazing story.
Yeah.
And I'm just there's a few things.
Yeah.
So as a mother now, you're a mother now, and I know that oftentimes, you know, I've talked about this before. When it comes to parenting, the mother just you want the best for them,
Absolutely.
right? Based on your experience, what you feel like is what's needed based on your experience. So if you came up in a time where it was just about get out the ghetto, then you're just going to focus strictly on career and making sure you're presentable to corporate America, and you just have like these points where you feel like, okay, well, do this, don't do this. And so often I feel and I see that the nurturing of the individual on that just like innate intuition, letting them explore, letting them be, so that the confidence doesn't necessarily have to come from be confident, but it comes from I'm confident because I see that my mother believes in who I am and is letting me explore. She's confident in that I'm going to be something great, regardless if I fit into this box or not. And so when I hear you talk about the jewels that she left you with, how do you feel being a parent now? Would you have done it differently? Because for me, I'm like, maybe if she had shared more about herself, if she had shared more about you, then that maybe, because that could have been a spiritual thing where
absolutely.
You were shy because what were you coming into? You know,
I think as a mother, definitely
being able to see
what we experience, we either want to tack on or we want to do something different. And so with me, I have 3 boys, and I said, you know, when I have children, I'm going to be as open as I possibly can. For me, that was what I needed. I can't say that may be what they need, but I'll be that parent.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Any conversation that we need to have.
Yeah.
I'm going to be open with you. I'm not going to hide from you because I know how recluse that made me feel having a mom that didn't want to have discussions, but I get it. It was a different generation. They didn't openly talk about stuff. So I was like, okay, let me move the needle. The other thing was the encouraging factor. My mother was not so good at encouraging, but you know, when there was something great, she did make me feel like, I told you can do it. Okay, now let's go to the next challenge.
Okay. She was the director of growth and development.
Okay, let's go to the next thing. With my kids, it is every feat. This is great.
Yeah.
I mean, I want you to feel that because, again, sometimes I think we take it in as because we didn't get it, we want to give to our kids. It's not necessarily that's what they needed, but that's what I'm going to give you.
Yeah.
And I'm a very open, loving mom. So, baby, we going to do kisses and hugs. I don't care how tired you get. I'm going to kiss you, and I'm going to let you know at the end of the day, I love you.
Yeah.
So But also with that, and I'll take away the life lessons that I learned, and even the conversations. As a woman, my mother's whole thing was strength, right? Strength, resilience, and being independent.
Okay.
And so she wanted me to edify that, at the highest degree. Her whole thing was, I never want you to walk out in life and not know, number one, who you are, what you're doing, and you can't survive by yourself. That biggest lesson came when she lost my dad. It was a change in the dynamic. And so she was just like, I don't want you, even if you don't get married or something happens to your spouse, you still got to know how to live. And that is something that I teach my boys as well. When you leave my house, I need you to know how to function.
Yeah.
Everything is different, but never don't let your ego get you to the point where you can't ask.
Yeah.
I'm always there to help. I'm always there to guide you. So you take in and then you put away what, doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And letting them know that just letting them develop
Absolutely.
themselves.
Yes.
I love, my mom was very loving.
Yes.
Very, very loving. And that goes such a long way.
It does.
I feel like that, and people will say, well, I'm not affectionate, or I don't need that. As a child,
Yes.
they even talk about studies like love is the first nutrient, right?
Yes.
So it's like those hugs, those I love yous. I have cousins who say, yeah, my mom never said I love you. And I'm like, dang, for real? And you can see a difference in the people that did not receive love.
Absolutely.
Like babies need to be hugged and held and squeezed and loved on. I feel like it definitely creates confidence.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I feel like that's amazing that you are able to give them that love. They'll always know to look for that love, and we need that.
Absolutely.
We absolutely need that. So I heard you mention something about since 8 years old, you kept your brother on your brain. Was that 8 or 11?
I was 8.
It was 8.
I was 8, yeah.
And
11 when I found out that I had a brother.
That you had a brother. And you kept him in your mind, and you said you prayed and meditated on that.
Yes.
Okay. At 8 years old, baby, how did you know how to pray and meditate like that?
Let me tell you something. So my grandfather was a preacher.
Okay.
So from a young age, my mother taught me how to pray.
Okay.
But another thing that he would do, so my grandfather was from the West Indies. All of him and his brothers, whenever they would come together, I didn't know what meditation was. I was just mimicking what he would do. And even when I would go to his house, he would sit in silence. He would have music playing, and this man was still, eyes closed, and it's almost like he was in a trance. And I remember I asked my mom, I said, what granddaddy be doing? He just sits there and he's still. And I said, at one point I was going to ask him, granddaddy, are you all right? She said, he meditates. And so I was like, what is meditation? And she said, you just kind of sit, you let your mind go, free your mind of anything that you're thinking about, and you just release. And so she said, that's what your granddaddy is doing. He's meditating. So the moments that you see him sitting still and he's not saying a word, he's being quiet, that is meditating. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna meditate. And I said, well, Mama, what do granddaddy meditate on? She said, well, when I was little, he would pray. And then he would meditate on the scripture. And he said he also taught us whatever we wanted to do. If we had an idea, meditate on that. Yeah. And so with that, I was like, oh, I'm a meditator. I'm trying to find my brother. I mean, it all comes together. And so the prayer was always, I want to see my brother. I want to see my brother. Because I want to know what it feels like to be the little sister, not the big sister.
Yeah.
And even meditating on the visual of actually seeing him. And so when it came to fruition, I was like, come on now. Yeah. It is definitely something to this.
Yeah. Yes. When they align.
Absolutely.
It's like, that you know why this happened.
Absolutely.
And that takes you to a whole place of, I guess, power, right?
Yes.
You feel the power that is just built into us. Now, typically I hear conversations about meditation and prayer
Yes.
being separate from each other. Prayer is religious, meditation is some spiritual, be afraid, be very afraid.
Yes.
Did you have that in your family? Was there like strict religion, but it was just all spirituality, or how would you describe?
We went to church.
Okay.
And again, like my mother she was open-minded because my dad was a free spirit. So one thing I will say, she wasn't like, you can't do this, you can't do that. She was on a journey to learn. She had been in the church since she was little. And I think too, you know, like with us, you kind of want to find your own way or whatever works for you. So she never was like, oh, you can't meditate and pray. It was welcome because she saw her dad do it. But of course, you know, you read, you study. There's, you can't meditate and you can't pray because meditation doesn't involve, you know, God. And
exactly.
But you do what's best for you.
Yeah.
And so even with that, doing it the way that I did with no pause or trying to define the difference between meditation and prayer, I did them all together and I felt like it worked for it's good. So
they're very similar.
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
very similar. That's probably how your grandfather could go right into a meditation after a prayer.
And I'm talking about baby for 30, 45 minutes.
I love that for him. I love that for him. And then to see that male figure doing that in the melanated, you know, black, so-called black, or however you want to say it. That's a strong symbol.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you were able to have that, because many of us, we barely learn about it if we're lucky to tap into that. Because I do feel like meditation reveals, you in the Bible they talk about, you know, you're made in the image of God, but they still try to separate you so far from God.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, well, if I'm made in the image and he's lit, then how could I not be like, I mean, how diluted am I from God, if you know what I'm saying? So so when I get into meditation and I'm like, I feel God in me.
Come on.
You know, and it's like, oh, this is the next level. This is beyond speaking to something outside of me, asking for something outside of me. It's like, no, we're gonna stir it up within. Yes.
And
that feels way more powerful. Yeah. So I want to get into seasoned dialogue.
Yes, come on.
That name is so good.
Thank you.
How did that come about? How did that name?
2 parts. So after 2020 with 2 double losses, I felt like, oh, something's changing. Something's different. There's a shift in my life. There's something I'm needing to learn right now. And it also was a point of isolation for me as well, because after that, I had a lot of unforgiveness in my heart, and I was dealing with that. God was dealing with me with unforgiveness. I began to think about a lot of things that my mom and I didn't secure, things that I didn't tell my brother, and I wanted to undo some things. I was going into 40 by this time. And so I was like, I don't know, something biologically feels different. And so there was a place where I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to rework some stuff. I'm going to learn how to forgive and really forgive, not just say that I forgive you and walk away and still be mad at you. I want to forgive because this is heavy on my heart. And then it went into the notion of, with this process of healing, goodness, I've learned so much about myself, and I'm reading, and I think I want to do a podcast. But then I was like, I'm shy. I don't want to do no podcast. But then it was continuously laid on my heart. When I thought of the name, I thought, wow, I have been through so many seasons of my life. Then the other part of that is I felt like a seasoned woman. And then the third part was, baby, we from the South and we season everything.
We season it
up. So I was like, season, but season what? And then I thought to myself, well, when you have a podcast, you dialogue, right? So I said, okay, we go season dialogue. We gonna just keep it like that, and that's what it was.
Yeah. Did it feel good once it hit?
Did. I wrote it down. And I said, if it looks good when I write, because it came out just feeling good. But I said, I got to write this down to actually look at it. And I said, that's it.
Yeah.
Susan dialogue. That's it.
That's really good. That's really it's perfect, and yet it's still so clever that it's just like, dang, well, I didn't think of that, you know?
Yes.
So that's great. So before you started the podcast, what kind of work were you doing? Were you doing anything in this space?
No, I was I went back to school. And right after I graduated high school, I had teachers to tell me, go to school for writing or literature. That was where the pool was. And so one of my teachers was like, oh, I think you would be good at media broadcasting. Baby, who?
Baby, what? That requires you to be in front of the camera.
And so I did. I went for that, and then it just didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
But psychology was one thing that was on the table. But I thought for whatever reason, psychology may have been a little deeper than I wanted to go back then. And so when I said I'm going to go back to school, psychology was the biggest thing that was like right there on the burner.
Okay.
And as I was going to school, I was heavy in it. And I also was trying to heal some things that I didn't understand. Like, why does this hurt? Why do I still feel abandoned? Why didn't I understand my mother's story? Why did my mother give me up for adoption? Like, I'm going through the whole thing and I'm reading, and I was like, oh, I got to get deep into this psychology thing. And I got my bachelor's degree, and I went back to get my master's because I want to practice counseling. And I said, this is my healing right here. This is the clarity that God is giving me. I was able to study beyond the textbook of what we were supposed to learn, utilizing the online library and looking at statistics and looking at papers written. And I was like, wow, here's the information right here. And so that information that was given to me, I was like, okay, now I have the chance to kind of rewire and redo this thing individually for myself and my family, because though it was presented to me in a package and I didn't necessarily like all of the package, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And so for my kids and for myself, I'm going to do the work as in understanding that those circumstances happen. It doesn't define who you are. Okay. Let's look at the brighter side of that. Number 2. Sometimes what we don't understand is not for us to understand. Not in the immediate right then, maybe in the future, but we wrap our heads around trying to figure out everything like right then and go stir crazy. And sometimes things just have to play out for us to understand on the back end. And I had to be okay with that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, who am I showing up as a person now? As a mother and as a friend and as a daughter, as a sister. Who am I showing up as? Because I could very well take the characteristics that I didn't like, because sometimes that happens as well. We don't like
you
a
don't even
certain
realize you're taking
and you don't realize it. And I said, oh, I got to be very intentional about what I do from this moment on. And I journaled all my life. So my journal entries became more in depth. While it wasn't, I was journaling, my day was this. It was, these are my thoughts. I intentionally did it to say, when I go back a year from now, I want to see where I was, where my mind was.
Yeah.
What did I learn? What did I take from that? So journaling helped me a lot. And then also, I've always been into poetry. So my poetry got a little bit deeper. And as I set into the poetry, it was almost like a regurgitation, like a pouring, like a purging of everything that I had been feeling. I said, oh, this feels good. I can't say that works for everybody, but for me, that was that healing that I needed. I felt like a new person after the self-work within myself. I think I've always felt like, I had it in me, but maybe because I stopped myself many times. It felt uncomfortable. So I stopped myself. But when I let myself just be.
You surrendered?
Yes, absolutely.
Ooh, that's so crazy, because the thought of how many times people stop themselves because it's too painful.
Yes.
I hear all the time that, people will say like, oh, you like that toxicity or you like that drama. And it's often, no, you're just so familiar with it.
Come on.
That it's actually scarier to tiptoe into somewhere where you don't know.
Yes.
Especially if you've had a lot of trauma in this space. It's like, could it be worse?
Yes.
And so we stop ourselves.
Yes.
We be in our own way. But there was this book that I read. I didn't finish it. I rarely finish books. It takes a lot for me to finish a book. I was like, okay, I got it. Like, I won't even finish it. I was like, I got this little nugget. But it was years ago, and I just remember it was at the Circle of Comfort. It was a red book, and it was a circle, and there was a dot in the middle. I think it was the concept was basically that comfort is in the middle, and on the edges of the circle is the breakthrough. But also on the edges of the circle is the pain.
Yes.
And it's a different kind of pain. It's not the comfort pain where you're used to it. At least you know what's coming. It's the unidentifiable pain.
Yes.
That tends to be scarier than the current pain that you're going through. But it helped me because it showed me that I'm going to go towards this pain because I know that the more painful it gets, that right on the other side of there is the breakthrough.
Yes.
So it was a really good book for me to be like, okay, go towards the pain, and know that it's worth it.
Absolutely.
To see it on that other side.
I like that.
Yeah. For you, I'm not a mother yet, but for you being a mother, like as you were going through your healing, what did you have to, sort out in your mind or fight through to allow yourself to go through your healing while you're also a mother raising children?
Absolutely.
I know often mothers feel like, okay, it's not about me anymore.
Yes.
And it's just like, how did you sort that out for yourself?
One of the things that my two oldest children told me, they're 16 months apart. So in 2020, that next year, my oldest son was going to be graduating from high school. And so, want to hang out with friends and blah, blah, blah. And so I will never forget, they set me down. They had a little meeting, honey, behind my back. And they was like, Mom, we need to talk to you. And I knew it was serious because they never really the concern in their face. And so they said, Ma, we feel like you are really overprotective. Grandma, I was like, what? You can't tell a black mama that. What? And I said, well, what did I do to be overprotective? And he said, you're very cautious for no reason. And so my oldest son said, you teach us and tell us these things to prepare for, but then before we can get to it, you stop us. And my second son was like, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was in that space of whatever someone tells me, I'm going to listen because they're experiencing me. But I ain't gonna lie. I was like, okay, these fighting words, but I'm sitting with it. And I said, you know what? They're right. They are absolutely right. We teach you how to drive. We teach you how to be mannerable. We teach you how to navigate in certain situations. And I knew for myself that at any point it was, where you going? What you doing? Like I was texting, calling every 5 minutes to the point where it was like they were being nice because I'm the mama.
Yeah.
But I knew I was driving them crazy. But it was also, I had to explain to them too, I didn't realize that it was that bad. But it was definitely bad after losing my brother and my mother.
Okay.
So it was the fear of, when you lose someone, you get scared. All of a sudden everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
So it was, I was so worried about them. And they were like, we can't even hang with our friends 30 minutes before you texting and calling, Ma, we're good. And I was like, you're right. I'm going to back up. I'm going to try my best to back up. And then we don't live too far from the hospital. So I would hear the sirens. And the first thing I do is pick up the phone. You okay? I just want to hear your voice.
You were so annoying.
I was that mom. I was that mom. The sirens go off and I'm just calling or I'm texting, text me back. FaceTime me. Where are you? You okay? You still got your limbs, you know? But that taught me to, baby, you gotta let go. You gotta let go. They were preparing themselves mindfully to be young adults, and I was still trying to keep them as my young babies, and they weren't at that place. So that, in essence, taught me, okay, even though I did like what I felt like was my work, my kids still had stuff on the list like, Mom, you got to do this. You know, since we opened up this conversation, well, you do this, and this. And I'm like, all right, okay, all right. Give me 2 things at one time. Don't give it to me all at once, okay? Because I was doing good. But it was beautiful again because I wanted to create that space of whatever you had to talk to me about, it's always an open door, right? I can't cower at the feeling of you wanting to come and talk to me, because now if I'm overly anxious, you ain't gonna tell mama nothing. So let me keep that door open. And we've learned so much about each other, not being my children's friend, but being the mother that allows you to come to me with whatever it is. Because not only am I teaching you, but when you have a daughter or a son, you do the same thing.
Yeah.
And when you get married, maybe you can open up that kind of idea to your wife. So
it goes in relationships because even in those romantic relationships, it just obviously when you birth a child, it's like, that's my child,
that's my baby.
That's an extension of me.
Yes.
We end up having this like possession.
Oh,
and it's the possession. And I think that can go, like how you were saying, the letting go, letting them be people, and realizing that our ability to be ourselves is really all we have in this life. If we can't ever reach that place or feel good about being ourselves and exploring that, we're looking for a life of like sadness and depression and anxiety. And so that was a learning experience for you.
Absolutely. And then a little clue into, here I am, you know, thinking to myself, wow, you know, in so many ways my mother tried to shelter and cover me, but she was doing the same thing. But then it's like, oh, I understand now. You know, she was being a mom, but then I wanted to say those things like, Mom, you taught me these things, but thank God I gave my son space to say, Mom, you know what I'm saying? Okay, I get it. I'll fix it.
Yeah, I'll fix it.
I'll fix it.
Okay, I need some advice. I'm going to relate to my sister.
Yes.
My sister is going through something right now. Her children are 4 and 8, 2 boys.
Oh.
And they are so snuggly and kissy, and they have this thing, and she's obsessed. And then I was talking to her. She was like, yeah. And she doesn't express herself that much to me, but she was like, yeah, they're getting so big, and I worry about them so much. They're going into a world where everyone's not going to love them how I love them, and people are mean and cruel. And for me, I'm just like, I'm the auntie that's like, they have their angels, they are prepared, they have what is within them. It's going to be okay. But as a mother, I can't give that motherly experience advice. And what could you say to her from your experience that allows you just to, I guess, maybe shift the mindset to a positive, empowering type of mindset for that?
I feel like what we put into our kids, they'll carry on. So while your sister's understandably being very precautious and loving, she's at that stage where the kids are still young, and so she's thinking about the future. But she instills the love. She instills their closeness, their maturity as they grow. Kids don't, even though we don't give children a lot of credit, and just like us, I mean, we made our mistakes. Children will as well. But you also have to believe that they know the core values. They go back to it. And so the advice for your sister is, let them live. Once they get of age, or, you know, close to getting out of the house, have that conversation. Talk to them about your concerns, how you feel, but also manage that in their younger years too. So whenever you have that conversation, it's not like, oh, Mom about to die. You know, like it's not like a
yeah.
weird conversation. It's something that you can just add on to, and they see where you're coming from, and it's understood. But we don't give kids enough credit. And so allow them to just utilize whatever it is that you taught them, the
Yeah.
values. They're going to use it.
Yeah. And they came through with that God body energy. There's something there. Come on now.
Come on.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to continue to nudge her in that direction.
Yes.
For sure. So, I have a little bit more that I want to get into, but this has been so amazing.
Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
for sharing.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
sharing
Yeah.
your story, your childhood, and just being adopted. Knowing now that you have joined your family, the addition or not, that, just more people. Now you know them and you're around them. How has that changed your life or your just like your experience and do you still as a woman feel like an adopted person?
No. Not at all. We are, now we don't talk every day, but it brought me joy. My two youngest brothers, everybody was staying in Connecticut, and my two youngest brothers, for whatever reason, they just had a pull to come to Georgia. And so my two youngest brothers live in Atlanta. So whenever, I'm up here, we spend time, and it just feels like a whole cohesive family. The way that I would describe adoption for anybody who's adopted, they would understand, right? So it's like a puzzle piece, a magnificent, beautiful puzzle piece, and you just got one piece missing. And so you search to find a piece that looks relative to the picture. And so when you stand back, it looks absolutely divine. It looks like it goes, but when you get close to it, it's like, oh, that piece really don't fit. And so that was the feeling that I had after, and even before then. It was like, this is different. I don't really look like my parents, and I don't look like my brother. So now having my siblings, it's not so much the look, it is also our behaviors, our quirkiness, our melatonin, or just the high energy that we have sometimes. And it's like, I relate, and now I cohesively fit into the puzzle piece. There is no piece that is constructed differently. It is the exact piece, and it fits. And so that's what it brought out of me. It is a happiness that I know some people may not be able to have. It's almost like somebody told me it's like a lifetime story, that it happened the way that it did. And I'm so thankful for that, So, yeah.
I'm over here listening to you. I'm over here thinking, like, you're from Statesboro. My bestie is from Chicago, and you guys talk so much alike. I'm like, you're not from Chicago? I don't know if it's the accent or just the pauses or just like, maybe it's just like the energy that I'm getting. But I just, you remind me so much of her as we're talking. There's just a couple of things more that I want to talk about just before we get up out of here. And one of the things that I saw that you talked about, and I'll just point both of these out, people chasing highs. And one thing, it's like, do you still feel shy? And this is before we get to chasing highs, but do you still feel shy, or do you feel like, okay, I'm just who I am, and now I've curated a well-being and a career that I can keep the structure? Like, how does that feel for you? Like, are you, when you have your podcast and you curated how you want it, and then someone asks you to come speak at I think you've been a few places. How does that this is like a question I wanted to know. Like, how do you feel when you're in those environments?
Shy, definitely, but also understanding too. I don't really walk into spaces that I don't feel too welcome in.
Okay.
And so I'm an energy person.
Okay.
And my mother used to say, I guess your intuition kicking on, honey. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, yeah, like something, you know, it's just not, it ain't, I don't feel it, you know, and I've always been that person. So I think it is a combination when I was little of maybe shyness and then also intuition, you know, feeling uneasy in certain places. So as an adult, I just kind of understand, like, I can still move as I move, but I'll still utilize that intuition. And even when people ask, you know, will you speak at this event? Let's get the rundown. Let me feel you first.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Let me feel let me talk to you. Let me see what this event is about. Let me get a rundown. Because when I'm in that space, I can still be modest me, but I can give my all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing speaking events or I'm, you know, out doing whatever that's outside of what was my comfort zone, I can still be in the space of God is utilizing me for something
Got it.
good.
Yeah.
And so that settles all of my, but if I was in an environment where it's like, now I knew this wasn't going to work. Then I'm flustered. You know, I'm feeling just uncomfortable. I shouldn't have did that. So the mixture of shyness and I think intuition as well. Yeah.
Okay. I love the intuition piece.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, I mean, now it's becoming more talked about how powerful intuition is.
Absolutely.
I think it needs to be at the forefront of people's lives. And have you ever felt like, even just being an entrepreneur and just in creating your own livelihood, have you ever felt pressure to just have thick skin? I'm gonna tough it out, because people have said to me, like, I've always been sensitive, and I know now that it was my intuition, my senses being like, I don't like this, something's not right, this is heavy, or this is too dense, you know, like I'm not okay with, you know, and didn't realize, and then people would be like, oh, that's just life, you just gotta get in, this is a part of it. Have you ever felt like, because I'm starting to see now, it's a part of that. It ain't got to be a part of this.
That's right. Come on.
You know, and we can create. Can create what we want for our lives. Have you ever struggled with that and feeling like, dang, is this not meant for me? Because I don't know how to tough it out, or, you know.
I've had people say that to me, but you know, I'm very stern and intentional about what I do and what I don't do. And if it doesn't feel right for me, I'm not doing it. I don't care what the other person says. Like, at the end of the day, it's my life. You know, I have to sit well with that. And if I do something that is off course, then it's not in alignment, you know, and though it may feel good for you, or though your thing is, well, just overcome it or whatever. Nah, that ain't my story. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm just going to sit here regardless of what you say.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, baby, it's me.
I love that. I feel seen.
Yes.
I feel seen. Okay, so back to this chasing highs. People chasing highs. I just saw you briefly speak on it. What do you mean by that? Like, what is your experience? What are you seeing in the community collective of people chasing highs?
Ooh, come on. Chasing highs can be a lot of things. Chasing highs can be this emergence of love that ain't really love. It's lust. Fame. Oh my gosh, there's so many counterparts.
Yeah.
Chasing something that gives you a temporary high or relief that doesn't extend to the long term. I tell my kids this all the time, like, social media is great, but it can also be horrible, right? So it's introduced this notion into, you get a viral moment, and for whatever reason, you know, you may feel like you a celebrity, or you want to keep pushing and seeing how far you can go with that. You chasing a temporary high, because baby, what are you putting into it? What are you defining? When it's years from now, can you keep on with whatever it is that you set out with? When it comes to love, the temporary highs of what we consider love. Oh, it's a feel-good moment. This is my person. This is my everything. But then you hyped up for what? You didn't even get to know the person. You don't know their back history. You don't know nothing about this person. We are continuously chasing things not getting the background information or just even education on something, we just jump into it. Just jump into it. And believing that this is a extended time period to sit in that. No, that's a high, baby. Just like a high.
Yeah.
You get high and then you come down. And then when you come down, reality is there. It's like, what are we doing now? You want something that's long term, that has longevity. Let's not chase the temporary things. And many times we know it's temporary.
Yeah.
You know, we want to keep it moving, the needle going. It's not going to work.
Is it and even with us knowing, we still do it? Is it because we haven't developed that muscle to know how to discern and then apply ourselves to the long term?
I think it could be. I definitely think it could be. And I think too, with any high, when you think about it, right, it gives you like this resonance of something uplifting or joyful. And so you want to ride that thing for a while and not thinking on the back end that this going to have to end sometime soon. So what we going to do to extend it, if it's something purposeful, what we going to do to extend it so that this high doesn't feel like a notion to just keep on pushing, but we ride it out and it just feels good from the duration of from point A to point B. That's what we're missing.
That's what we're missing.
That's exactly what we're missing.
So you see it as a lot of people, some people, most people are not cultivating a purpose.
No. And that's the thing. Like when I, again, speaking of love or social media or whatever, you can put anything into the category. It's just something that feels good at the moment. And so you try to add on to get that high up again.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in ways that pull you down, where it's about to end. Because the same thing. Like, again, this person feels great.
Yeah.
Awesome, right? And then maybe that emergence of what you consider love doesn't feel like that. So you're going to keep chasing to try to feel it. But you never knew on the back end why you defined it as love in the first place. And so you're killing yourself trying to get back to that moment when really all it was just a moment.
It was just a moment.
It was just a moment.
It was just a moment. And those chemical reactions that are so strong that we associate it with our destiny or something.
That's it. On and popping. A viral moment. Oh,
that
this
instant,
put me in there.
The instant gratification that our society is truly addicted to.
Yes.
And I talk about this often, is just like wanting to get people's insight on the power of moving slowly.
Come on. Ooh.
And resting.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, everything that I feel like we talked about today, even your journey, it seems like you had moments where you were able to go slow and figure things out.
Oh, absolutely. I believe in going slow. I believe in going slow. What happens fast doesn't last. You know what I'm saying?
Bars.
And it doesn't. What happens fast doesn't last. Going slow. And I feel like when we are in the slow movement of things, we feel it. We feel the ins and outs. We see the stages. We see things envelop. We see things move. When we're moving too fast, we don't see none of that.
You don't.
We are sideswiped. We so in the moment. Well, we didn't even learn the lesson, baby. At the end of the day, it's like it was just a millisecond. If I ever had to describe any part of my journey, it was a slow pace. This is what I learned. This is how I felt. This is what it gave me. This is what it presented to me. I can explain all of that. In your mind, you think about the things that we did fast, and you be like, I was just.
You might even be a little cringe about some of the things now. You're like, ooh, what was I thinking?
Slow movement. Yeah. Yes.
I think that's a whole movement. When I know that you spoke about season dialogue starting off as a shift for you personally, and it was healing for you, and it was just an extension of what you were already doing in your personal life, just like the journaling and the poetry. Has it shifted in any way since you've put yourself out there,
Yeah.
and you've given such an offering to, you know, the community. What has shifted for you? Has the purpose shifted? Has the intention shifted? What are the things that that you deal with to stay on track? Because you are like I feel like the teachers, the new teachers and healers and people like yourself are becoming the new, not celebrity because it's not that, but in a sense, you're a public figure. People know you. You have an audience that's waiting for you. What does that look like, and how have you remained, you know, comfortable and at ease and in harmony?
What initially made me uncomfortable made me comfortable. Again, Seasoned Dialogue, the podcast itself, was to bring forth more of a healing. Okay. It was just purging, you know, and just talking about life lessons. But then you never know or realize on the back end what it turns into.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe the 6th or 7th episode, I had people emailing me or in my inbox, and they were talking about things that I had discussed on the podcast. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then we dialoguing, we talking. And then it became more, and it was like, oh, okay, God, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Many times I feel that every single person has a story, right? If God said, sit on that story, just sit on it, I would have never known this person was going through that. This person was going through that. And then even the openness of people to just talk. They don't know me.
Yeah.
I don't know them. You know, but just to have that conversation, it put me in a space of, God, I see what you're doing. And I no longer feel frightful or uncomfortable doing certain things. I think in those moments when you find your purpose, you sit into your purpose and you know it's yours. You don't have to deviate from it. You don't have to be anything that you aren't. Baby, I am me 24/7.
Yes.
What you see is what you get. And I'm glad that God utilized me for that purpose, because had it not been for those things, Seasoned Dialogue wouldn't have happened. You know, and so I'm thankful for all of that.
Yeah. So you remain in gratitude.
Absolutely, every single day. Every single day.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, I want to ask a question. I just want to dang, I forget the question as I'm thinking about the question. What is the topic that most people are concerned with or asking you about, or advice, or like, what is there a topic?
I think the number one topic that is asked or discussed is that women are coming to this place where they realize that sometimes they are the problem and they want to undo it in relationships.
Whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
Yes. They understand maybe from a mate telling them, a close friend, you toxic. And they don't want to feel like that anymore. You know, it's a heavy weight to carry. And I think when most women realize, I am the toxic person, I no longer want to be labeled as toxic, I want to undo this. They'll give me a situation or situations, or they'll discuss something, and then we go line by line and we talk about it. And I think it is too, because we are in this space of mental awareness, and many people, they're fighting for their life. They don't want to, whatever they got in them, they don't want to give to the next person, or they don't want to harm the next person unintentionally. So women are really trying to do the work. And that is the question that I get. This is a situation. I find out that through a mate or a family member or whoever, that I'm toxic. And I hate that for myself. I'm going to give you an example, blah, blah, blah. We discussed it and that's it. Women are really doing the work out here.
Wow. That's beautiful, because I mean, I feel like you must have like the graduate student people coming to you, because that seems like they've already done a little work to get to the point to ask that question, versus I see so many comments, people talking about women don't take accountability, women don't. That's overwhelmingly what I see.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, we're not taking accountability.
That's part of it. I think a lot of women are seeing that. that, you know, they're feeling that and they want a healthier version of themselves. They just don't want to be the person that they've been told that they are. But then again, when that accountability happened, it's realizing, oh, I am that person.
Yeah, they
Let
want
me
change.
Yes.
They like, okay, I complained for the last 10
Yes.
years. I just want something different. Please, I surrender.
That's it.
Help me.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
Yes.
That we're coming to that place.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy for
Yes.
us. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being here.
You're welcome. I
am
enjoyed
so
my time.
honored.
Yay.
I'm glad you enjoyed your
Thank
time.
you.
Is there anything else that you feel like we should tap on that you can think of?
You know what? We talked about so much. I
We
think
did
it was
talk
good.
about it.
I think it was.
It was good. Okay, I just want to make sure. So I want you to look into this camera and just tell everyone like where they can find you, anything you have coming up that you want, that offering or anything like that, so they can know how to get to my girl.
Okay. Well, hello. My name is Lisa Marie. I also have a podcast called Season Dialogue. You can find me on IG, season_dialogue. And starting February 3rd, I will have a Patreon up. So you can follow me at Season Dialogue as well. And sometimes I'm on YouTube if you want to find me there. Season Dialogue, my babies.
Yes. See you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did.